The diplomatic station floated between three star systems, far from any planet and far from any weapon. It was meant to be a place where first contact would not turn into first blood. Long silver halls curved around a glowing central core, and quiet lights pulsed like a calm heartbeat. Commander Elias Wren stood near one of the observation windows. Outside, stars drifted slowly, distant and cold. He had trained for this moment for years, but training did little to quiet his thoughts. They moved on their own, jumping from memory to worry to curiosity without pause. He thought about the reports he had read the night before. He thought about his mother, back on Earth, pretending she wasn't scared. He thought about whether he was standing straight enough. He thought about what kind of creature waited on the other side of the sealed chamber door. The alien envoy was already inside. Her species called themselves the Kelari, though humans struggled to pronounce it. They were known across nearby systems as powerful telepaths. They had no spoken language the way humans did. Words, images, emotions, all of it passed directly from mind to mind. It made them excellent diplomats and terrifying enemies. This meeting was the first time a Kelari had agreed to be in the same room as an unshielded human. Elias had volunteered, not because he was brave, but because he was curious. The door slid open with a soft hiss. The room beyond was wide and empty, with no furniture except two low platforms facing each other. The air felt thicker inside, as if it carried a quiet pressure. Soft light reflected off smooth walls that seemed almost alive. The Kelari envoy stood at the center. She was taller than Elias, her body long and slender, with skin that shifted color like oil on water. Her head was elongated smooth, with no visible mouth. Large dark eyes reflected the room back in distorted shapes. Thin, fin-like structures along her neck fluttered slowly, a sign of calm, according to the xenobiologists. Elias stepped forward and stopped at the marked line on the floor. He did not bow. He did not speak. He simply waited. The alien tilted her head slightly. That was all the movement she made before the contact began. Elias felt it like a sudden drop, the way a stomach feels when an elevator descends too fast. His vision blurred for a fraction of a second. Then warmth spread behind his eyes, not painful, just strange. He knew without being told that she was touching his mind. The Kelari envoy expected order. That was how it always was. Every species she had ever encountered thought in controlled patterns. Some were emotional, some logical, some slow and simple, others sharp and focused. Even chaotic minds had rhythm. Even violent minds had structure. The human mind had none. The moment contact formed, it was like stepping into a storm. Thoughts slammed into her from every direction. Not one thought, but thousands. Images layered over memories. Questions buried under worries. Half-formed ideas crashing into detailed plans. Emotions rose and fell without warning: concern, amusement, fear, determination, boredom, curiosity. And beneath it all, a constant, endless internal noise. The Kelari envoy recoiled. Her body stiffened, fins flaring wide. A sharp, involuntary gasp escaped her throat, a sound no human had ever heard from her species before. She stumbled back a step, one long limb bracing against the wall. The connection snapped. Elias felt it immediately. The pressure vanished, replaced by a dull ache behind his temples. He stopped himself. He hadn't been told whether speaking would make things worse. "Are you okay?" The alien's eyes were wide, her skin flashing erratically through pale shades. She did not answer right away. The observing scientists behind the glass froze. Instruments spiked. Alarms flickered but did not sound. After several long seconds, the envoy straightened. Her breathing slowed. Her colors settled into muted blues and greens. She raised one slender hand. Contact resumed carefully, slowly, like touching fire after being burned. This time she tried to focus. She searched for a single clear thought. She found none. Elias stood still, but his mind did not. He thought about how quiet the room was. He wondered if the alien could hear his heartbeat. He remembered a joke one of the engineers had told earlier. He worried he had done something wrong. He wondered what she was thinking about him. The Kelari staggered again. Pain bloomed behind her eyes, not sharp but crushing. It was not the thoughts themselves that hurt. It was their number, their overlap, their refusal to slow down. How, she finally transmitted, the thought shaped carefully into something the human translators could interpret. "Do you endure this?" Elias blinked. "Endure what?" She pulled back just enough to observe him without being drowned. "You are never silent," she said. "Your mind does not rest." Elias let out a short, nervous laugh. "That sounds about right." The envoy studied him, truly studied him, not just as a diplomatic subject but as a living anomaly. Humans were supposed to be non-telepathic, crude, loud in speech, quiet in mind. This one was quiet in speech and impossibly loud inside. "Do you not feel pain?" she asked. "Sometimes," Elias said honestly. "Headaches, stress, anxiety, but this," he shrugged slightly, "this is just thinking." The word echoed strangely through her awareness. Thinking. For the Kelari, thought was a deliberate act, focused, controlled, shared. A mind left unattended could drift into dangerous patterns. That was why their young were trained from birth. Humans train nothing. "And yet," she said slowly, "you function." "Most days," Elias replied. There was something almost gentle in his tone, something that made her hesitate. She extended the connection again, not to explore but to observe from a distance. She felt it immediately, the pull of his awareness brushing against her presence. He noticed her too. Not consciously, not as a voice or image, just a subtle sense of being watched. His thoughts shifted. He wondered if she was uncomfortable. He hoped he hadn't hurt her. He reminded himself to stay calm. He thought about her eyes, how different they were, how alive. The envoy flinched, but this time she did not retreat. "Your attention," she said, strained, "moves without command." Elias frowned. "Is that bad?" "For us," she replied, "it would be fatal." Silence settled between them, heavy and strange. Beyond the room, the scientists whispered urgently. They had expected difficulty. They had not expected this. The envoy made a decision. She strengthened the link. The full force of the human mind crashed into her again. She saw memories she did not ask for. A blue sky over a training field, laughter echoing through metal halls, the weight of responsibility pressing down at night when sleep would not come. She felt emotions that were not hers, hope tangled with fear, determination wrapped around doubt. Her body trembled, but beneath the chaos she sensed something else. Balance. The thoughts did not destroy each other. They flowed. They collided and separated, constantly shifting but never collapsing. The human mind was not broken. It was adaptive. It bent instead of shattering. The envoy pulled back, breathing hard. "You are dangerous," she said. Elias stiffened. "I didn't mean." "Not by intent," she clarified. "By nature." She looked at him with something new in her eyes, respect. The session ended shortly after. Medical teams escorted both participants out, though neither was truly injured. Reports were filed. Data was analyzed. Words like unprecedented and anomaly filled the station's networks. Elias sat alone in his quarters later, staring at the wall. He replayed the moment again and again in his head. The gasp, the look in her eyes, the way the room had felt when their minds touched. He wondered what she had seen. Unbeknownst to him, the Kelari envoy stood in her own chamber, hands trembling slightly as she attempted to quiet her thoughts. But even as she did, she felt echoes, fragments of a human mind that refused to be forgotten. And for the first time in her long life, she wondered if silence was truly strength, or if humanity's endless noise was something far more powerful. The days after the first meeting were tense across the diplomatic station. Humans whispered in corridors, scientists argued behind sealed doors, and security teams doubled their patrols even though no one could explain what danger they were guarding against. There had been no attack, no threat spoken aloud, yet everyone felt that something important had shifted. Commander Elias Wren tried to return to routine, but routine refused to return to him. He attended briefings, signed reports, and answered the same questions again and again. How did it feel? Did you hear a voice? Did you see images? Did you feel controlled? Each time his answers were simple and honest. I felt pressure, then nothing, then pressure again, he said. She didn't hurt me. I think I hurt her. Most of the humans did not like that answer. Across the station, in a chamber designed to reduce sensory input, the Kelari envoy stood alone. The walls glowed faintly, tuned to calming frequencies meant to steady a telepathic mind. Normally, this room would have brought instant peace. It did not. Her thoughts would not settle. She tried to narrow her focus, to slow the flow, to return to the clean silence her species valued. But every time she reached for stillness, something interrupted it. A ripple. An echo, not a voice, not an image, but a presence that felt strangely familiar. The human. She had touched thousands of minds in her life. Warriors, leaders, scholars, even criminals. Once a link ended, the impressions faded quickly. Memories dissolved. Emotional residue vanished. This one did not. She could still sense him, not directly, not clearly, but like background vibration, as if his thoughts had left an imprint on her awareness. That alone unsettled her more than the pain had. Her people believed the mind was a closed system. Contact was temporary. Influence was controlled. What she had experienced challenged all of it. She requested another session. The Kelari Command Council responded with alarm. Your physical response was severe, they transmitted. Human cognition is hazardous. Further exposure is not advised. It is necessary, she replied. Explain. They do not project intent, she sent. They generate constant cognitive output, unfiltered, untrained, yet stable. There was a pause as her words were processed. That is not possible, the council responded. And yet, she answered, it is real. After long debate, permission was granted under strict conditions: short exposure, medical oversight. Emergency severance protocols active at all times. When Elias was informed, he did not hesitate. I'll do it, he said. One of the doctors frowned. You don't know what prolonged contact might do to you. Elias shrugged lightly. I don't know what it's doing to her either. But running from it won't help. That answer worried them even more. The second meeting took place in the same chamber, but this time more equipment lined the walls. Monitors tracked neural activity, heart rate, and energy fluctuations no one fully understood yet. Elias stood at his mark again. He had tried meditation beforehand, breathing exercises, mental focus techniques. They helped a little, but thoughts still slipped through. He wondered if she could tell he was nervous. The envoy entered, moving more slowly than before. Her colors were muted, controlled. Her posture was careful, as if she approached a dangerous animal, not hostile but unpredictable. They faced each other in silence. This time, she did not rush. She extended her awareness like a thin thread instead of an open channel. The moment it touched his mind, she felt the familiar surge, but weaker, distant, still overwhelming. Thoughts layered endlessly, not louder than before, but clearer now that she was prepared. He was thinking about the equipment, about how strange it was to be studied while standing still, about her movements, her caution, about whether she was afraid. She focused on that last thought, fear. It was not sharp or dominant in him. It sat beside curiosity and concern, neither replacing the other. She pushed gently, sending a single clear concept, caution. Elias felt it not as a word but as a sense, like a reminder brushing against his awareness. His thoughts stumbled for half a second, surprised by the intrusion. Oh, he said softly. I felt that. Her eyes widened. You perceived it, she transmitted. Yeah, he replied. Not clearly, but yeah. That was new. She adjusted, narrowing the link further. She stopped trying to understand everything and instead anchored herself to one thing at a time, a memory, a feeling, a question. It helped. The pain faded into strain, manageable but present. "You do not guide your thoughts," she said. "No," Elias answered, "they just happen." "Does that not frighten you?" He thought about that. The answer came honestly, without effort. "Sometimes," he said. "But it's also how we solve problems, how we imagine things that don't exist yet." She absorbed that slowly. Among the Kalari, imagination was structured, shared, controlled. Dangerous ideas were isolated early. Humans allowed them to roam free. She tested the link further, sending a gentle emotional tone rather than a concept. Calm, not forced, just offered. Elias felt his breathing slow. His shoulders relaxed without him noticing. "That's helpful," he said with a small smile. "Thank you." The envoy felt something unexpected tighten in her chest. Gratitude. It was a simple thing, but in telepathic species, gratitude was usually shared instantly and fully. Here, it remained contained, individual, unbroadcast unless chosen. She realized then that humans were not loud because they wanted to be heard. They were loud because they were alone inside their own minds. The session continued longer than planned. She learned to skim instead of dive, to let the flood pass while observing patterns beneath it. Human thought was not random, it was layered. Background noise carried instinct and emotion. Surface thoughts handled the present. Deeper layers stored memory, fear, hope, and all of it ran at once. "How do your young survive this?" she asked. Elias laughed quietly. "Barely. We learn, we adapt, we distract ourselves. Some of us struggle more than others. Yet you do not collapse." "No," he said, "we just keep going." That phrase echoed in her mind. We just keep going. When the link finally ended, neither of them collapsed this time. Both were exhausted but stable. Outside the chamber, alarms that had been ready never sounded. Scientists stared at their data in disbelief. The envoy returned to her quarters again, but this time the silence came easier. The echoes remained, but they no longer hurt. She replayed the session carefully, examining what she had felt. The human mind was not a weapon. It was an environment, loud, chaotic, full of danger, but also full of life. She sent her report to the Kalari Council. "Humans are not resistant to telepathy," she transmitted. "They are incompatible with conventional telepathic dominance. Their cognition overwhelms external control by volume alone." The response was immediate and tense. "Clarify. A single human produces cognitive output comparable to multiple trained telepaths, not directed, not focused, continuous." Silence followed. Then a single thought returned. "This changes strategic calculations." "Yes," she agreed. "It changes everything." Meanwhile, Elias sat in the station's observation ring, staring at the stars again. His head ached, but it was a familiar ache, like after long hours of thinking. He felt different, not altered, not controlled, but aware. He could still feel where her presence had been, like a memory that hadn't faded yet. He wondered if she felt it too. Across the station, the envoy paused mid-thought. She did. For the first time, two species separated by biology, evolution, and silence found themselves linked by something neither had expected. A mind that would not stop. And a galaxy that would soon have to learn what that meant. The diplomatic station did not sleep, but it did slow. Lights dimmed slightly during the station's artificial night cycle, and the constant movement of personnel eased into a quieter rhythm. Even so, tension remained like a hum in the walls. Elias felt it everywhere he went. After the second session, he was no longer just a volunteer. He was a subject. Scientists watched him more closely now, scanning his neural patterns, asking him to describe sensations that were difficult to put into words. He answered patiently, though part of him wished they would stop circling the same questions. Nothing felt wrong inside his head. If anything, it felt familiar. The ache faded after rest. His thoughts returned to their usual speed, their usual clutter. Worries about duty mixed with memories, idle curiosity, half-formed ideas about what might happen next. If the alien envoy had changed him, The change was subtle enough to hide within the noise. He wondered if she was experiencing the same thing. The Kalari envoy spent long hours reviewing data with her own people. The council chambers existed partly in physical space and partly in shared thought, but now she kept her distance from the collective link. Even brief contact felt different after exposure to the human. Their calm unity felt almost thin. She reviewed recordings of her own neural activity during contact with Elia's. The graphs were chaotic, far outside normal ranges, yet they showed no signs of collapse or damage. Instead, her brain had adapted, shifting patterns to compensate for the overload. That adaptation disturbed the council. Your neural structure altered itself, one elder transmitted. Such changes usually occur over generations, not days. I remain functional, she replied, improved in some areas, or compromised, or expanded, she countered. They did not like that answer. To the Kalari, stability was survival. Expansion carried risk. Still, they could not deny the results. The envoy had not broken. She had learned. She requested a third session. This time, the humans hesitated. Admiral Torres, overseeing the station, folded her hands as she studied Elias across the briefing table. "You're not required to continue," she said. "Whatever this is, it's already beyond expectations." Elias met her gaze. "If we stop now, we leave questions unanswered. Questions that might get you hurt, or might keep a war from happening," he replied quietly. The room fell silent. The Admiral sighed. "One more, short. If either side shows distress, we end it immediately." Elias nodded. That was all he had wanted. The third session was different from the start. The room had been adjusted. The lighting was softer, the walls tuned to reduce sensory feedback. There were fewer observers, fewer machines. It felt less like an experiment and more like a meeting. The envoy entered without hesitation this time. Her posture was steady, her colors calm. She no longer looked at Elias as if he were a threat. She looked at him as if he were a puzzle. They stood facing each other again. This time, she did not initiate contact immediately. Instead, she observed him through normal senses, something her species rarely relied on. His breathing, his stance, the way his eyes moved, always searching, always alert. "You are thinking," she said. Elias smiled faintly. "I always am." "About what?" "Right now," he considered. "About whether this room feels smaller than before, about how you seem less tense, about whether you're judging me." Her eyes narrowed slightly, all at once. "Yeah," she reached out. The connection formed smoothly without the violent shock of the first meeting. She had learned how to approach his mind, how to let the flood pass without resisting it. Still, it was immense. Thoughts rolled endlessly. Even when he focused on her, even when he tried to slow down, his mind filled the space with motion. Background worries, random associations, sensory input, emotional undercurrents. But now she noticed something else. Patterns. His thoughts looped, yes, but they also connected. Ideas sparked from unrelated memories. Emotions blended instead of replacing one another. Where her species separated feeling from logic, humans allowed them to coexist. "You associate freely," she observed. "We call it thinking," Elias replied. "Messy but useful." She explored carefully, following a single thread, a memory of training. The pressure of responsibility, the fear of making the wrong choice, fear again. It was still there, but it did not dominate him. It informed him. "You live with uncertainty," she said. He nodded slightly. "We don't really have a choice." Among the Kalari, uncertainty was minimized. Plans were shared, outcomes predicted, risks reduced through collective thought. Individual doubt was smoothed away by consensus. Humans carried doubt alone. She pushed gently, testing a theory. She attempted a mild influence, the kind used to calm aggressive species or ease negotiations. Not control, just guidance. The response surprised her. Elias felt the suggestion and absorbed it, but instead of following it directly, his mind reacted around it. His thoughts adjusted, considered, and reshaped the influence until it fit his own intent. He was not resisting, he was integrating. She pulled back slightly, startled. "You did not yield," she said. "I didn't feel like I needed to," he replied. "But I didn't ignore it either." That was impossible. Telepathic influence relied on clarity and dominance. A stronger signal overwrote a weaker one. But Elia's mind did not operate on single channels. Her influence became just one input among many. It could not take control because there was no central point to seize. "You cannot be commanded," she said slowly. "We can," Elias corrected. "We just choose when to listen." The difference mattered. She realized then that human minds were not undefended, they were decentralized. Where telepathic species relied on focus and unity, humans relied on redundancy. No single thought defined them. No single emotion ruled them. Their minds were crowds, not leaders. An invading telepath would not face one will. They would face thousands. The envoy felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. Elsewhere in the galaxy, telepathic warfare was subtle and terrifying. Entire populations could be pacified, redirected, or erased without firing a weapon. Against humans, that strategy would fail. Not because humans were stronger, but because they were louder than control itself. The session continued, deeper now. She showed him fragments of her own experience, not images but feelings. The calm of shared thought, the comfort of never being alone inside one's mind. Elias listened, absorbing it with quiet fascination. "That sounds peaceful," he said. "It is," she agreed. "And yet it is limited." "Limited how?" "There is little room for surprise," she replied. Elias thought about that. About human art, human mistakes, human discoveries that came from accidents and chaos. "Surprise is kind of our thing," he said. She felt amusement flicker through his mind, light but genuine. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel it too. When the connection ended, neither rushed to step back. "You are not broken," she said finally. "Your species should not exist as it does, and yet you do." Elias chuckled softly. "We get that a lot." She studied him one last time before turning away. "Others will fear this." "I figured," he said, "they will see you as a threat. Also familiar." Her colors shifted, something close to resolve. "Fear does not always lead to destruction," she said. "Sometimes it leads to caution." After the session, reports spread quickly. Human neural architecture was analyzed in new ways. Theories formed. Some spoke of danger, others of opportunity. The phrase began circulating quietly among analysts and strategists: cognitive saturation species. A species whose thoughts could not be overridden because there was always too much of them. The Kalari Council received the envoy's final transmission for the cycle. "Humans are not weapons," she sent. "They are environments. Entering their minds is like entering a storm. You may survive, you may even learn, but you will never control it." The council fell silent. On the observation ring, Elias watched a distant star flare briefly before fading. He felt tired but steady. Somewhere beyond the walls, the galaxy was beginning to understand what humanity truly was. Not silent, not focused, not easily guided, just endlessly, stubbornly thinking. And that, it seemed, was enough. The warning came without sound. No alarm screamed. No lights flashed red. Instead, a strange pressure rolled through the diplomatic station, subtle enough that most humans did not notice it at first. A few paused mid-step. Others rubbed their temples, confused by a sudden sense of unease. Elias felt it immediately. It was not pain. It was not a voice. It was the feeling of being watched from the inside. He stiffened where he stood in the observation ring. Stars blurred as his focus turned inward. His thoughts, already moving fast as always, began to collide harder, sharper. Something was touching them. Across the station, the Kalari envoy froze. She knew this feeling. It was a probe, not hers. Her fins flared wide as she reached outward instinctively, extending her awareness beyond the station's walls. What she felt made her recoil in alarm. A foreign telepathic presence pressed against the station like a tide. Strong, disciplined, cold, the Vierks Collective. They were an old power feared across many systems. Where the Kelari sought balance, the Vierks sought dominance. Their telepaths did not negotiate minds, they conquered them. Entire fleets had surrendered without firing a shot once the Vierks took control of command crews. They had been watching. They had learned of humanity, and now they were testing. The probe slid deeper. Humans across the station reacted in different ways. Some felt sudden anxiety. Others grew irritable or distracted. A few collapsed briefly, overwhelmed by a pressure they could not name. But none of them obeyed. The Vierks expected resistance. They did not expect noise. The moment the probe made full contact with the human population, it shattered into chaos. Millions of thoughts surged outward, unfiltered and uncontrolled. Fear mixed with curiosity. Confusion collided with stubborn focus. Memories, emotions, questions, half-finished ideas all at once. The Vierks telepaths reeled. Their minds were trained for clarity, for dominance, for seizing a single thread and pulling until it snapped. There was no single thread. It was like plunging into a storm made of voices, none louder than the others, none willing to fade. The pressure increased. Elias dropped to one knee, breathing hard. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His thoughts raced faster, but not toward submission, toward resistance. Not conscious resistance, instinctive. His mind did what it always did under stress. It multiplied. He thought about training, about his mother, about the alien envoy, about the station, about survival, about what came next, about nothing at all. The probe pushed harder. And broke. The backlash slammed into the Vierks like a tidal wave. Several Vierks telepaths screamed, not aloud, but in shared thought. Their carefully ordered mental structures collapsed under the weight of raw human cognition. Defensive walls meant to filter enemy influence became traps, reflecting the overload back inward. Some lost consciousness. Others lost control. The attack did not end gracefully. It ended violently. The pressure vanished as suddenly as it had come. Across the station, humans staggered, confused but free. Medical teams rushed to those who had collapsed. Most recovered quickly, shaken but unharmed. Elias remained on the floor for a long moment, breathing slowly until his thoughts settled back into their usual storm. He looked up to see the Kelari envoy standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "You felt that," he said. "Yes," she replied. Her voice, translated through thought and machine, was tight. "All of you did." "What was it?" She hesitated. "An enemy," she said at last. "One that now knows something it did not before." In the hours that followed, chaos spread through diplomatic channels across the sector. Reports poured in from Vierks-controlled space. Telepathic units incapacitated. Command structures destabilized. Entire ships left drifting as their crews struggled to recover mental coherence. The Vierks had attempted domination. Instead, they had been drowned. The Kelari Council convened in emergency session. "This was reckless," one elder transmitted sharply. "Your continued exposure to humans has drawn attention." "They would have come regardless," the envoy replied. "Curiosity always precedes conquest." "And now?" "Now they are afraid," she said. Fear rippled through the council. The Vierks were not known for fear. "They will respond with force," another elder warned. "They cannot use their greatest weapon," the envoy replied. "Not against this species." That truth settled heavily among them. Humanity had not fired a weapon. They had not even known they were under attack. And yet they had repelled one of the most feared telepathic forces in the galaxy. By existing. On the station, Admiral Torres addressed the assembled command staff. Her expression was grim. "We have confirmation," she said. The attempted psychic intrusion originated from the Vierks Collective. It failed. A murmur spread through the room. "Failed how?" one officer asked. Torres glanced at Elias before answering. "Completely." Elias shifted uncomfortably. He did not feel like a weapon. He felt like a tired human with a headache, but he could not deny what had happened. The Kelari envoy requested immediate audience with human leadership. When she entered the briefing room, every eye turned to her. Humans watched with caution now, not fear but awareness. They knew something had changed. "You have become visible," she said without preamble, "to powers that do not tolerate unpredictability." "We noticed," Torres replied dryly. The envoy inclined her head slightly. "You should understand what you are." Elias spoke before he could stop himself. "People." A flicker of something warm passed through her awareness. "Yes," she said, "and more than that." She explained the attack in simple terms: the probe, the backlash, the damage inflicted without intent. "You are immune to domination not because you are strong," she said, "but because you are many." "Many people?" Torres asked. "Many thoughts," the envoy replied. "Your minds do not unify, they overlap. Any attempt to control you becomes lost in excess." Silence filled the room. One scientist finally spoke. "So, what happens now?" The envoy's gaze darkened. "Now the Vierks must choose between adapting or escalating. And if they escalate, they will abandon subtlety," she said. "They will use force." Humans exchanged glances. Force was something they understood. Preparations began immediately. Defensive protocols were updated. Fleets were placed on alert. Human commanders studied data from the failed probe, trying to understand what had happened without realizing they had trained for it all their lives. The Kelari envoy remained on the station, advising, observing. She watched humans argue strategy, disagree openly, challenge authority, and still move forward together. Their lack of unity should have been a weakness. Instead, it made them flexible. Elias found her later, standing once more by the observation window. "You saved us," he said quietly. She shook her head. "No, I warned you, there is a difference." He considered that. "You're still here." "Yes." "Why?" She looked at the stars, at the endless dark filled with threats and possibilities. "Because," she said, "the galaxy is about to learn a dangerous truth. And that is," she turned her gaze back to him, "that some storms cannot be silenced." Far away in Vierk space, damaged minds struggled to rebuild order. Leaders convened, shaken and furious. Humans had been classified as primitive, non-telepathic, easy. That assessment was gone. They reviewed recordings of the attack again and again. The noise, the overload, the loss of control. One conclusion emerged, chilling in its simplicity. Humans could not be ruled through the mind, and that meant any future conflict would be loud, brutal, and physical. For the first time in generations, the Vierks prepared for a kind of war they hated, one they could not think their way out of. And unknowingly, humanity stood at the center of it, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as something far more dangerous. An answer the galaxy had never prepared for. The station changed after that. It was not something that could be measured by sensors or charts, but everyone felt it. The halls seemed narrower, the silence heavier. Humanity was no longer just a guest among the stars. It was now a known force. Elias stood on the command deck as ships moved into formation outside the station. Human vessels were not elegant like Kelari craft or massive like Vierk's warships. They were practical, armored, built to survive damage rather than avoid it. The Kelari envoy watched the activity with quiet focus. "You prepare for war," she said. "We prepare to not lose," Elias replied. She studied him. "You are afraid." "Of course," he said. "Anyone who says otherwise is lying. Yet you do not hesitate." "No," he admitted. "Because we don't have the luxury." That, more than anything else, defined humanity. The Vierk's attack did not come immediately. They waited. They studied human responses, fleet movements, communication patterns. They searched for weakness in chaos, expecting that a species so internally divided would fracture under pressure. Instead, they found arguments. Human leaders disagreed loudly. Scientists clashed with generals. Politicians delayed decisions while commanders prepared anyway. There was no single voice, and yet ships were built, weapons were tested, evacuation plans were drafted, civilian populations were informed. The lack of unity did not stop action, it created options. The Kelari envoy sent her final report to her people. Humans do not move as one, she transmitted. They move as many in the same direction for different reasons. This makes them unpredictable. The council asked the question she had been waiting for. Should we ally with them? She did not answer immediately. She remembered the storm of Elias' mind, the fear that did not paralyze, the noise that became strength. Yes, she sent, before others do. The Vierk's attack came without warning. This time it was not a probe. Vierk's warships emerged from folded space at the edge of human territory. Their weapons were precise, designed to disable rather than destroy. They expected surrender once fear took hold. They misjudged the species again. Human ships did not retreat. They did not wait for orders from a central command that did not exist. They reacted. Some charged forward aggressively, others flanked. Some pulled back to protect civilian transports. Every commander acted on local information, instinct, and training. It looked like chaos. It was not. The Vierks attempted telepathic disruption again, focusing on individual ships, individual crews. The result was the same. Their telepaths screamed as human minds flooded back at them. Fear, anger, determination, desperate plans, broken jokes, memories of home. The noise drowned precision. Vierk's ships began to fall, not because they were weaker, but because they could not think clearly anymore. Elia's ship took a direct hit. The deck shuddered. Consoles sparked. Someone shouted a damage report. Elia's thoughts scattered instantly, options, risks, priorities. He did not try to calm them, he let them run. Reroute power, he ordered. Ignore the left flank, push forward. Sir, that's risky. I know, he said. Do it anyway. They did. The move made no sense by Vierk's standards. It sacrificed optimal defense for momentum, but it worked because it was unexpected. The Vierk's commander tried to predict human behavior. There was nothing to predict. Across the battlefield, Kelari ships joined the fight. They did not attempt telepathic coordination with humans. They learned quickly that humans fought best when left alone. Instead, they adapted. Kelari telepaths shielded human fleets from external psychic attacks, not by controlling minds, but by redirecting the noise outward, amplifying it toward the enemy. The effect was devastating. The Vierk's formation collapsed. Some ships fled. Others were disabled. A few self-destructed rather than face capture. The battle ended not with a decisive blow, but with exhaustion. The Vierks withdrew. Silence returned to space. On the command deck, Elias slumped into a chair, hands shaking slightly. Around him, his crew laughed, swore, and checked on each other. No speeches, no celebrations, just relief. The Kelari envoy appeared beside him. "You survived," she said. "So did you," he replied. "Yes," she agreed. "Because of you," he frowned. "We didn't do anything special." She looked at him carefully. "That is not true." After the battle, negotiations resumed. This time the Vierks asked for them. Their message was cautious, controlled, afraid. They proposed borders, non-aggression, mutual recognition. They did not attempt telepathic contact. They had learned. The galaxy watched closely as agreements were signed. Humanity was not declared superior, not dominant, not invincible. They were declared incompatible with psychic control. That was enough. The term spread quickly through galactic networks. The white noise species, a species whose thoughts could not be silenced. Elias returned to Earth months later. Life resumed in familiar ways. Traffic, weather, arguments about unimportant things. It felt strange after the stars, but also comforting. One evening, as he walked alone beneath the open sky, he felt a familiar presence brush against his awareness. Gentle, respectful. "You are thinking loudly," the envoy's thought came, faint but clear. Elia smiled. Some habits don't change. You are remembered, she said. By many, that sounds dangerous. Yes, she agreed, and hopeful. He looked up at the stars, countless and distant. Will there be peace? He asked. There will be caution, she replied, and sometimes that is better. The connection faded. Elia stood there for a long time, thoughts drifting freely as they always had. He thought about fear. He thought about noise. He thought about how humanity had never been silent, and how, for the first time, the galaxy had listened. Far beyond Earth, among stars that had once dismissed them, a new understanding settled in. Humanity was not loud because it lacked control. Humanity was loud because it endured. And in a universe that tried to think everything into order, that endless, stubborn noise had become something powerful, something permanent, something the galaxy would never forget.